Next one is from Crystal.
Good evening again, candidates. So I have a lengthy one. I will state this slowly and then repeat it if you all would need me to. Do you feel that the consent decree should apply to all police working within Cleveland? And what changes would you implement to enforce the current consent decree? First candidate, Dennis Kucinich.
Yeah, I favor the consent decree. I would like to see Cleveland be in a position to successfully complete it so that we as a community can take back direct control of our police department and that we can work together collaboratively with those who are involved in review of the police department to make sure that we have a police department which reflects the aspirations of the community. I think that Cleveland has made more progress than most cities in this regard, but we have a lot more to do. And while I want to hire 400 more police, I want to make sure those police are racially sensitive, are aware of civil rights, and are also going to make sure that we have a community where everyone's rights are going to be protected. I want 100 new individuals who will be working on crisis intervention, and we can make sure that they will set a higher tone. And I want a civic peace department where we change the whole organizational principle of law enforcement. So I think that taking those kinds of steps, building from the consent agreement, we can have a police department which people of Cleveland will be proud of.
Thank you, Mr. Kucinich. I will repeat again the very lengthy question for you all, just to ensure you're answering a proper question. Do you feel that the consent decree should apply to all police working within Cleveland? So that's consistent with the RTA regional police or other many small police stations. And what changes would you implement to enforce the current consent decree? Mr. Reed, you are up next.
Well, it would be nice if we can have a consent decree throughout the city of Cleveland for officers who don't literally work for us. But I think that at the end of the day, what's got to happen is we've got to be that barometer. We've got to be that poster child. And the reason that we've been talking about a consent decree, because we have been a poster child for how not to do policing in the city of Cleveland, especially when it comes to people of color and people that have mental health issues. And I think one of the things that we have to do is we've got to put in what I've talked about here tonight and what I continue to talk about. And I ask people to go to zachreed.com and look at my 10-point plan, and it highlights a real community policing plan. Because if we don't put that real community policing plan into effect here in the city of Cleveland, we're going to be on this consent decree for an awful long time. And I agree with the congressman. You know, we've got to work to get away from this consent decree. It is causing too much, it's causing tension in our community. It has been good for the city of Cleveland to at least have someone here that is looking at the way that we are policing here in the city of Cleveland, because the way we were policing in the past was unconstitutional. We know that, citizens know that, and a young Black man of color like myself, I know it firsthand. I've listened to the horror stories of young Black men that have been stopped by police officers and found themselves in a situation. So yes, we've got to work hard to get that trust back into the system. And as mayor of the city of Cleveland, I believe we get that trust back into the city of Cleveland by implementing a real community policing plan. And I've got that plan. Go to zachreed.com to look at my plan.
Thank you, Mr. Reed. Next, Sandra Williams.
Crystal, yes, I do believe that the consent decree should apply to all law enforcement communities within the city, the hospitals, the RTA, and such. We've also reports about what has been happening with those individual police departments, and I think they should also be required to comply with the consent decree. Some of the changes I would make is looking at the standards that myself and others who are on the Ohio Community and Police Collaborative have put in place ever since Tamir Rice's demise, and making sure that all law enforcement officers, including, sorry, I'm just looking at the camera, I'm sorry.
Sorry about that.
Making sure that we're compliant. So we have about 25, 30 standards that we have that the Cleveland police department has not adopted. Some of them may be in the consent decree, but there are others that are not, and we need to adopt those.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. Next candidate, Justin Bibb.
You know, Crystal, with this question, I'm thinking about Arthur Keith this evening, a 19-year-old Black man who was shot and killed by CMHA police. No real answers, no accountability, no transparency, and his family is still grieving and fighting for justice. There's many instances of that kind of police misconduct, not only in Cleveland, but in other surrounding jurisdictions. And we are in a special reckoning right now in this city and this nation where Cleveland can lead the way. Now, the consent decree was a good step in the right direction, but we got a long way to go to make sure we meet the aims of the consent decree. That's why I'm supporting the Safer Cleveland ballot initiative to make the Cleveland Police Commission permanent. And I hope that other folks in this race will join Ross and I and be on the right side of history to ensure we can get this moment right. And don't be bamboozled, right? With this ballot initiative, it's giving the next mayor the ability to share the power with the people to rebuild that trust, to rebuild that culture that the residents of the city deserve. And the mayor is going to be able to appoint survivors that have been brutalized by police, law enforcement experts, attorneys, and other grassroots organizations and activists to be a part of this commission to ensure we can truly meet the moment and get policing right in our city.
Thank you, Mr. Bibb. Next candidate, Mr. Ross DeBello.
Thanks, Crystal. Yes, I do believe the consent decree should apply to all police in Cleveland. To go with the second part of your question, I think that that's one of the changes we would need to implement, you know, and as Justin stated, I am of course in favor of making the police commission permanent, independent agencies. Even if you went, I don't care how many years without an incident of alleged excessive use of force, well, that's proof of success. So why would you ever get rid of it? Why would you ever get rid of it? Another change that I would make, right, I think above and beyond the other candidates, is I would fund the groups, the commission at a very high level, right? We need them to be able to invest their time, have the resources they need to, you know, do the subpoenaing. They need to subpoena, you know, things of that nature. They need funding and they need backing for the teeth of it, right? When monitors are being asked to step down, you need to publicly advocate that those monitors are able to independently do their job, right? Decipher the allegations and feel free to make the judgment that, you know, their expertise would recommend. So I'd also kind of make sure that RTA police aren't weaponized, and some of these other independent groups that we're trying to put under the police decree, we would try and work with them and make sure that they have the training that consent decree requires. And if they don't need weaponry, then we, you know, demilitarize some of these groups.
Thank you, Mr. DeBello. Last but not least, Mr. Kevin Kelly.
Thank you, Crystal. To the answer to the part one of your question, which is, should it apply? Perhaps it should. But those other smaller police departments are not parties to the consent decree. And it's not something where, you know, it would be disingenuous to say that as mayor, you could just apply it to them. I think we need to look at, you know, where is the state of policing in the city of Cleveland? Where have we come from and where do we need to go? The consent decree was born out of a tragedy of a police chase that ended in East Cleveland with 137 shots being fired. That's when our Mayor Jackson, you know, asked, you know, the Justice Department to come in. And that was where the consent decree was born. Since the consent decree has been implemented, we have seen progress. We have seen a move forward. The crisis intervention training for every officer is a giant step forward. De-escalation training for every officer is a giant step forward. The body cams, technology changes, all of the things that were designed to make policing more constitutional happening. Just the culture of going from a warrior mentality to a guardian mentality is an important cultural shift. But we're really not going to get to the point where the consent decree is really being fully realized when we are as short-staffed as we are in the Division of Police, when we are not giving the police the tools, the support and tools that they need to do the very hard job that we're asking of them. And when you're asking a zone car officer to go to 20 to 30 calls for service within a shift, but yet we're not providing wellness training, we're not making sure that we're attending the mental health of that officer, but yet we're expecting them to be at the top of their game on their 30th call, just like on the first. We need to deal with our staffing issues. We need to deal with how we are supporting our police. We need to put in place true community policing. We need to really make sure that our policing strategies mirror the neighborhoods that we're policing. And of course, this is something that won't be a day one issue, but we have to deal with the root causes of crime. And that is, poverty, it's disinvestment, it's lack of hope. It's we have to get to that. And that's going to be something that's going to take a long-term commitment. So we're far from done with what needs to happen with the consent decree. We've made significant progress. I believe we're not going to be able to get to where we need to be as a division under the terms of the consent decree if we do not deal with the staffing issue we have in the Division of Police, the equipment issues, and making sure that we give them the support and tools they need to succeed.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly, and to all the panelists who were able to answer the question. I'm going to kick it over now to Janae.